Sometimes they still call you mom or dad, but something feels different. The warmth isn't quite the same, you sense a distance growing. In this video, I want to gently walk you through the 6 subtle signs your kids may be pulling away, and what you can do about it. You know what I've seen happen more often than people expect? It's when your kids stop asking for your advice. It doesn't make a big noise when it happens. There's no announcement, no argument, it just fades. One day you realize they've already made the decision before you even knew there was. 1. Maybe they used to call you before signing a lease, before switching jobs, before making parenting choices, and now they just inform you afterward in passing. It's easy to feel like they don't care what you think anymore. But the truth is often more complicated. Sometimes it's not that they don't want your thoughts. It's that they've shifted into a place where they don't think to ask. Or they've begun to see you less as someone to consult and more as someone to inform. That shift might come from them trying to be more independent, or from a subtle assumption that you wouldn't understand. Either way, for you, it may feel like being left behind in a part of their life you used to be central to. And when that space grows too quietly, it's easy to start wondering if it's your fault, if you gave advice too often or too firmly, or maybe missed something they needed. But I want to say this gently. Even when children pull away, the door to connection isn't gone. Sometimes it just needs to be knocked on a little differently. I remember working with a woman named Helen, 74, from Illinois, a bright-spirited woman who raised 3 kids, mostly on her own. For years, her oldest daughter would call her to ask everything from what to cook for a family gathering to how to talk to her boss. They'd talk for an hour, sometimes more. But then, slowly, the calls shortened. Her daughter still called, but she didn't ask anymore. It became updates. News, logistics. Helen told me, "I feel like she sees me now like the weather report. Good to hear, but not something you rely on." That sentence stuck with me. We talked through it, and what came up was that sometimes as parents, we offer so much advice that our children begin to feel they're expected to do things a certain way. Even if the advice is good, they may crave the freedom to figure it out for themselves. Helen tried something new. Instead of offering answers, she started asking questions. When her daughter mentioned a work issue, Helen would say, "How are you thinking about it? Or what feels right to you?" She told me it changed the tone completely. Her daughter opened up more. And eventually she began asking again. Not always, but often enough for Helen to feel that door was back open. What often helps in these moments is shifting from giving to inviting. One of the simplest ways to do this is to ask open questions. When they share something, try saying, "That sounds important. How are you handling it?" or "What's your gut telling you?" These small changes show your kids that you're not here to control, but to accompany. And that difference, it means more than you might think. You haven't lost your place in their life. You might just be moving into a different kind of seat, one that listens more, asks more, but still matters just as deeply. Your experience still has weight, and when you offer it without pressure, it becomes a gift they want to return to, not a duty they avoid. Holding that gentle space can reopen doors you thought were closed. Another sign I often see, one that slips in quietly, is when your kids stop sharing their inner world with you. They still talk. They mention what they did over the weekend, how work is going, maybe even some family updates. But the conversations become lighter, thinner. The laughter's still there, but the depth isn't. You used to know when something was weighing on them. Now you find out long after it's passed, or maybe not at all. This kind of emotional quiet can feel like a curtain being drawn. Not slammed, just drawn. And it's not always about distrust or anger. More often than not, it's about protection. They don't want to worry you. Or it's about distance. They assume you wouldn't relate to what they're facing. It can also come from your own past reactions. If your child once shared something vulnerable and felt judged, even gently, they may have quietly decided to keep more to themselves next time. And I want to say, this doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's simply a shift that comes with adulthood. They carry their stress differently. But if you're feeling left out of their emotional life, it's okay to want more. It's human to miss that closeness. I remember a man named Robert, 71, from Arizona. He used to have long conversations with his son, Darren, about everything from work stress to parenting frustrations. Robert said he loved those talks. He felt useful, connected, like a friend as well as a father. But over the past year, the calls got shorter. Darren would mention things like, "It's been a crazy week," but never explain why. Robert would ask, "What happened?" and get answers like, "Oh, just stuff." It hurt, though he didn't say anything at first. Eventually he shared his feelings, not by confronting Darren, but by softening his own tone. Next time they talked, instead of asking for details, he said, "I really miss hearing what's on your heart. Even the messy stuff, it helped me feel close to you." Darren was quiet for a bit, then admitted he'd been holding back because he didn't want to sound like he was complaining. That moment opened something between them. Robert didn't push for all the details, and he just held space. And in the months that followed, their conversations began to deepen again. What helps sometimes is simply giving your child permission to be messy around you. You can do that with just a phrase or two. Try something like, "You don't have to have it all figured out when you talk to me," or "I may not have all the answers, but I care about what you're carrying." You'd be surprised how that kind of safety brings people back. Even adults want to be heard. Not fixed, not judged, just heard. When you make room for that without rushing to respond, your presence becomes a comfort, not a pressure. You don't have to pry or press. Just let them know the door is open, and you're sitting right there ready to listen. Something else I've noticed over the years is how quietly the visits and calls begin to fade. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no announcement. No sudden silence, just a slow shift. First they call every few days, then once a week, then it becomes a few texts here and there. You wait for the phone to ring, and when it does, it's quick, practical, and often distracted. You might hear, "Sorry, it's been so crazy lately," or "I meant to call, time just got away from me." At first you understand. Life gets busy, work piles up, kids get sick, schedules fill. But over time the gaps between the moments grow longer, and without even meaning to, you begin to feel like you're no longer part of their rhythm. Not angry, just forgotten. That feeling can be hard to name and even harder to talk about, because you don't want to guilt them. You just want to know you're still on their mind, that you still matter. I worked with a woman named Gloria, 76, from upstate New York. Her son, Josh, used to call her every Monday night. It was their ritual. They'd talk about the week, the grandkids, even what groceries were on sale. She looked forward to it. But after Josh got promoted at work, the calls became less frequent. 1 week turned into 2, then 3. Gloria started feeling anxious, even a little resentful. She told me, "I don't want to chase him, but I don't want to disappear either." Instead of blaming him, Gloria tried something different. She began sending short messages, not heavy, not emotional, just warm little touches. "Thinking of you, hope your day's not too crazy," or "saw your favorite soup at the store." Made me smile. At first there was no reply, but then Josh texted back, "Thanks Mom, needed that today." Slowly they started reconnecting. It wasn't the same schedule, but it was real. And it reminded Gloria that sometimes the rhythm just changes, but the music is still there. One of the simplest things you can do in these moments is to reach out, but do it gently, without expectation. A short message, a photo, a memory, a small thought. I walked past the old diner today, remembered our Sundays there. Little things that say, "I'm still here, I still care." It's not about forcing them to respond, it's about reminding them that you're a steady presence in a noisy world. You're not forgotten. You're part of their story, even when the pages feel blank. Sometimes they just need a quiet nudge to remember the comfort of your voice. And even if they don't respond right away, your kindness plants a seed. Keep sending those little sparks. They find their way back. Here's something that tends to surprise people. When your kids start avoiding conversations about the future, not just the far-off, someday kind of future, but the personal, practical questions about what's ahead for you. Things like your living situation, your health, your wishes for care, those conversations often become uncomfortable, rushed, or brushed aside entirely. You may bring it up gently, and they say, "Let's not talk about that right now," or "We'll cross that bridge when we get there." But the truth is, avoiding those talks isn't just about being busy, it's often about fear. Many adult children don't know how to face the idea of their parents aging or needing help. It stirs up guilt, uncertainty, sometimes even panic. They worry they'll be expected to make decisions they're not ready for. Or they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. So instead of leaning in, they pull away from the conversation. Not because they don't care, but because they care so much it overwhelms them. Still, for you, the silence can feel like being left to handle things alone, and that's a heavy weight to carry. Especially when all you want is a little clarity, a little support, and to know that your needs won't be ignored later just because they're uncomfortable now. I think of a man I worked with named Eugene, 79, from Ohio. He had lived in the same house for 45 years, a place filled with memories, but also stairs that had become harder to climb. He wanted to talk to his daughter, Casey, about possibly moving to a smaller place or at least making the home safer. Every time he brought it up, she'd change the subject. "Dad, you're fine," she'd say, or "You've still got plenty of time." Eugene didn't want to be dramatic. He wasn't planning to move the next day, he just wanted to plan. He told me, "I don't want to wait until I fall to have the conversation." Eventually, he wrote Casey a letter, not emotional, not demanding. Just a few lines. "I know these talks aren't easy, but I need to have them. I need to know we're both ready when the time comes." That opened the door. Casey called him in tears, saying she didn't know how to bring it up herself, and they had the most honest talk they'd had in years. One helpful approach in these situations is to start small and start with your perspective, not theirs. Say something like, "Lately I've been thinking about how I'd want things to go if I ever needed extra help," or "I've been wondering what kind of living space would make me feel most at ease in the future." You're not making demands. You're inviting conversation, and that makes all the difference. Talking about the future doesn't mean giving up today. It means taking care of the people you love by making things easier before they become urgent. You deserve that peace of mind. And your children, even if they're scared, will often feel relief once the door is open. You're not being a burden. You're being wise. One more sign that tends to slip under the radar is when your kids seem constantly busy, especially when you need something. You call and they say they're swamped. You ask for help with something small and they respond with, "I wish I could, but this week is crazy." Now, of course, they may be genuinely busy. Life is demanding, work deadlines, parenting, household stress. But when it starts to feel like they never have time for you, it can sting in a quiet, deep way. You start to feel like asking for help makes you a bother. So maybe you stop asking. You try to do things on your own. Even when it's hard, even when you're tired. And that sense of self-sufficiency, once a point of pride, now feels a little lonelier. But here's what I want you to hear. Setting boundaries isn't the same as pulling away emotionally. And sometimes what feels like rejection is really just poor communication. A lot of older adults I talk to feel unsure how much is okay to ask. They don't want to be seen as needy, but they also don't want to fade into the background. The key often lies in how you ask, in offering flexibility and clarity rather than guilt or pressure. It creates space for your children to show up, not out of obligation, but out of love. I worked with a man named Frank, 73, in Colorado. His knees had gotten worse, and he found it harder to do errands in winter. One week he asked his daughter, Lisa, if she could take him grocery shopping. She said, "I really can't, I'm slammed this week." Frank felt hurt, not angry, just quietly dismissed. He stopped asking after that. Later in one of our sessions, he said something that stuck with me. "I just want to feel like her yes doesn't have to be every time, but her want to help is still there." We talked through some ideas, and Frank tried a new approach. Instead of asking for help in the moment, he sent Lisa a message. "Could we talk about ways I can get groceries this winter? Maybe we can come up with a plan together." That small shift turned it into a collaboration, not a request. Lisa responded with ideas, delivery options, setting a regular schedule, even helping set up a grocery app. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like teamwork. One of the easiest ways to bridge this gap is to offer a choice. Instead of, "Can you do this?" Try, "Is there a time this week that works for you to help with this?" Or even, What would be the easiest way for us to handle this together? That phrasing gives your child space to say yes in a way that fits their life and keeps you from feeling like you're asking for too much. You're not asking for favors, you're inviting connection. Your needs are not a burden. And when you approach them with grace and flexibility, you allow your kids to step in without guilt. That's not weakness, that's wisdom wrapped in kindness. One of the hardest moments, and often the most painful, is when you realize your children are sharing more with others than they do with you. It can happen subtly. You find out something important about them, a job change, a health issue, a big decision, not from them but from someone else. A neighbor mentions it, or you see a post online, or it slips out in conversation with another family member, and you're left wondering, why didn't they tell me? That question lingers. It doesn't come from jealousy. It comes from love, from wanting to still be a trusted part of their inner circle, from missing that closeness you once had, when you were the first person they came to with news or worries or excitement. When that place in their life starts to fade, it can feel like grief, quiet, ongoing grief. But before you let it settle into resentment, take a breath. This shift doesn't always mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes, adult children find it easier to open up to friends, co-workers, or even online communities because there's less emotion involved. Or they worry about burdening you, about your reaction, or about reopening old patterns. Still, you have every right to feel what you feel. Wanting to be included in their emotional world is not selfish. It's human, and it's absolutely something that can change, gently, slowly, with care. I remember working with a woman named Darlene, 70, in Florida. She found out that her son had been struggling with depression, not from him, but from a mutual friend at church. She was shocked, not just by the news, but by the fact that he hadn't said a word. "I'm his mother," she told me, tears in her eyes. "Why wouldn't he tell me?" When she asked him, he got quiet. "I didn't want you to worry," he finally said, "and I didn't know how you'd take it." Darlene was heartbroken, but she also realized something important. In trying to protect her, her son had distanced himself emotionally, not because he didn't love her, but because he thought that love meant shielding her. So she took a step toward him. Not with blame, with vulnerability. She told him, "It hurts not to know. Even if it's hard stuff, I want to hear it from you, because when you trust me with the truth, I feel close to you." It was the beginning of a new kind of trust. Not perfect, but better. One gentle way to reopen that door is to say something simple like, "I'd really love it if you shared those things with me directly. It helps me feel part of your life. No guilt, no demand, just an honest wish." That honesty has a way of softening walls. You are still important. You are still a place of safety, even if your children have forgotten that for a moment. Sometimes all it takes is a warm reminder, and they begin to remember, not just who you are, but what you mean to them. And that, truly, can change everything. If any part of this touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share what felt true for you. Your voice helps others feel less alone. And if this brought you comfort, tap subscribe and the bell. You are not alone. You are needed. And the connection is still yours to keep.